into the 7th month of the year. I don't know where 2024 is going. I really have no idea. One minute it's January, the next minute we are a week into July. And that means it is time for me to do my June wrap up. Hey everyone, it's Ray. Welcome to my little bookish corner of the world, which is getting more and more bookish by the day. I even had a delivery of books today, and they weren't ones I ordered, which is always nice to say. And they were unexpected too, which is even nicer. But we're here, or I'm here, to talk about my June reading, which was a huge mixed bag. I mean, massive mixed bag. I honestly didn't know what to expect as I went into the month. I knew there were a couple of books that I had to read, namely the book club book, which we're meeting the second week of July. And at that point, we will be talking about the book we've read and also planning for our August meeting, where we'll be talking about Babylonia by Costanza Casati, which is my #1 2024 anticipated read. So I'm really looking forward to that. It arrived a couple of days ago. Less of that. Let's talk about June. Anyway, it was, as I said, a very mixed month with not many really anticipated reads, unfortunately. And it's going to be a bit of a mix as well. I have got some ebooks. I read a book for book club on ebook because I didn't want to purchase the physical, as I knew it wasn't going to be a book that was really to my taste, and I sadly wasn't proved wrong. And also I read a book for on NetGalley, which was a pleasant surprise, and also not a surprise because it's by an author that I really enjoy, whose work I feel is possibly underrated. Anyway, I'm going to start with actually the last book I read in June, and that was The Expectant Detectives by Kat Ailes. This is a cozy mystery stroke cozy crime. It's quite humorous, and it is the first in a series, and I believe the second one, which is called Dead Tired, came out in June. Anyway, I found this I was actually recommended this multiple times when it first came out last year, and I was in such a frame of mind that I was like, no, I'm just going to read the familiar. There are a couple of books by authors that I haven't read before that are on my list, namely, at that point, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and also I think it was early in the year, so it may well have been Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. One I enjoyed, the other I didn't, and I have talked about both of those on here previously, so I'm not going to bore you with the details. Anyway, I didn't know quite what to expect when I got this, though many people had said it's really funny, you'll enjoy it, it's your type of book, and they weren't wrong. It was very funny. My favourite character was a dog called Helen, who is, in the words of the owner and the vet, an odd dog. I imagine her as a very beautiful, blonde, long blonde fur, quite elegant and graceful, who totally disgraces herself at every point and every opportunity, to the point where her friends, the main character's friends, Alice's, say, please don't bring your dog. Don't bring Helen. Everyone's welcome, but don't bring your dog with you, because she is a disaster on 4 legs. But this was the story of, there are actually 2 murders. And while I didn't guess the murderer and I didn't guess the motivation either, partially because neither of them were really revealed, or the motivation wasn't even, it was hinted at but wasn't really talked about that much throughout the novel, I had my suspicions and they were completely wrong, and I'm happy that they were wrong. And this is a mess of a review. What I should say is, if you like cozy mysteries and you like something a little bit more modern with slightly younger Miss Marple-esque characters, then The Expectant Detectives is amusing, it is light, it is funny, and Helen is amazing, and she isn't even the main character. So that was my last read in June. I literally read it I think I finished it at about 10:30 on the night of the 30th. The next book was one of my more anticipated, and that was The Queen of Poisons by Robert Thorogood. This is yet another cozy mystery, and it is the third book in the Marlowe Murder Club series. I enjoy Thorogood's books. I enjoy his creative work because I am a fan of Death in Paradise, though the last couple of seasons weren't really to my taste. I preferred the earlier seasons, if I'm being honest. But this book was teased at the end of Death Comes to Marlowe, at least the paperback version, in which the mayor of Marlowe is murdered, and they're at a planning meeting, which Suze, one of the trio of Marlowe Murder Club members, is attending because she wants to get planning permission to build a pod hotel in her garden, thinking it'll be ideal. I can make them all it's going to be pods of 8, or no, pods of 6, I believe, lying, and she imagined them lying flat when it turns out it actually would be towers. So she gets that kind of wrong, but while she's at this meeting, before anything has been discussed, the mayor, who seems to be a not bad guy, in all honesty, is murdered, and he's poisoned, in fact, by the Queen of Poisons, which is aconite. And it is yet another opportunity for Judith, Suze, and Bex to get their sleuth on and solve the murder with as consultants to the local police force. I enjoyed this book. I found it funny, and yet again it was another one where the motive was there all the way through if you knew what you were looking for, but I still didn't guess who'd done it, and I'm happy about that, because there have been far too many instances in recent years where I have sat there and I've read about 20 pages in and I've gone, that's a murderer. And I'm proved right. And that happens far too often, sadly, in the MC Beaton books. But it didn't happen with this one, nor did it happen with the Cat Ales. So this is a book, if you enjoyed the Marlowe Murder Club and Death in Marlowe, or Death Comes to Marlowe, then Queen of Poisons is one for you. The next book was one of my 1-star review picks, and that was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I have done a video about this and the other 2 books that I picked up for this month, for June. It's not a bad book. It reminds me a little bit of an Isabel Allende in style. It's based during the Spanish Inquisition, so magic and religion play a strong part, because if you were considered to have magical powers, unless they were a miracle, then you were burned as a witch, because nothing that was non-religious was considered acceptable. And the main character in this book is a Jewess who passes off the magical powers she's kind of inherited from her family line as miracles, and is then put into a trial of sorts with other people who've exhibited miraculous gifts to become a magical advisor or a religious advisor to King Philip of Spain. And there's a subtle and gentle love story in this as well. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I have done a full video, which I will link above either side here. And yeah, it's not a bad book. It's not the same. If you're expecting something that's like Six of Crows, or even if you're expecting something like Hellbent, apparently I have not read it, then you won't find that here. But I didn't find it as bad as many of the reviews made it out to be. The next one, this is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I didn't really enjoy this book. This was the 3rd time I tried to read it, and I actually finished it. If I hadn't managed this time, it was going to be an unhaul. It probably still will be an unhaul, but I have finished it. It was okay. It was a 2.75 maybe stars for me. And if you want to see the review for this one, again, it was one of my 1-star Goodreads picks. So I will post the video link for you to check that out. And I'd love it if you did check that out. And if you're here and you've made it this far, please don't forget to comment if you've read any of the books that I've read so far, if there are any books you'd recommend because of the ones I enjoyed, and what you thought of these books if you have read them. The next book was my book club book for this month, for July, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I have seen this book all over Instagram, all over BookTok, all over pretty much every platform under the sun, and never really felt the urge to pick it up. It was a cute story. There were moments where I did kind of start to cry a little bit, and that is a test for me when it comes to books that are meant to be emotional. It was a nice quick read. That's a good thing, right? I liked it, but I don't think it's going to be enough for me to read the other 4 books in the series. And I do think that they are quite expensive books. I know that they are beautifully designed, I have to say. They are beautiful design, very, very simple, but at the same time stunning to look at. However, that really isn't enough for me to say I'm going to read the other 4 books. I think I'm going to leave it with this one, but I did enjoy the story. Next book was the final book in my 1-star reviews pick my books for June, and that was God's Grave by J. Kristoff. This is the sequel, the second book in the Nevernight series, and while I enjoyed it, I would say it wasn't as good as the first book, and for that reason I gave it 3.75 stars. And again, if you want to find out what I thought about this and the other 2 books, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and The Familiars, that I picked up for my June 1-star reviews, and also what I've picked for my July TBR from that particular jar, head over to the video. I will link it in the notes below, and let me know if you've read these books and if you think, like me, that the second one wasn't quite as good as the first. The next is book 7 in my list of June reads, and this is Miss Harris in the New World by Peter Morn. This is the second in a series, and it was fun, it was light-hearted, but there were elements of seriousness, mentions of PTSD, because it's after the Second World War, and several of the people who are in this theatre company are ex-military, and it's a story of a production called Love and Miss Harris that gets a rather unusual tour in America. It's been off the West End in the UK, and now they are travelling to America on a very old bus to perform in theatres across the country. And it's about the people they meet, the journey they go on as a company, and also the development, the growth and development of their friendships and the bonds that they have, as well as the dislike they have for some of the other members of the group. There's an undercurrent of the East End crime that was very, very big during this period, and I didn't classify. This is based just after World War II, so there is an element of all of the East End crime syndicates, the crime gangs that were in. They were very prevalent, and there is also mention of the mob and mobsters, as pertains to one of the characters who wants to go straight because he's fallen in love with someone. I enjoyed this book. I read it for a book tour, and though I haven't read the first one, I do think it is actually quite good as a standalone. Next one was my June read for the Agatha Christie read along, and that was Poirot in Appointment with Death. This is actually touted as brilliant and better than Death on the Nile, which is one of my favourites, but not quite my favourite. And I did enjoy it. I didn't quite guess who'd done it. The motivation behind it was intriguing, and this is going to be one that I talk about in my Amateur Sleuth series. So if you want to find out what I thought about this in comparison with the David Suchet version, and if there is another version, I will have to do a bit of research. But if you want to find out what I thought about it in comparison with that, tune in at some point in the next couple of weeks, because I am going to be doing an in-depth dive into both Appointment with Death, the book, and Appointment with Death, the TV episode, which is actually 2 hours long. now we get to the two ebooks that I read. The first was The Watchers by A.M. Shine, and that was the book club read for May to June. So I read it on the 1st of June with knowing our meeting was on the 3rd, I believe. And I knew that it was going to be a very quick read. It was okay. I'm not a huge fan of gothic horror in general. It's a genre that I don't read very often, if at all. And I found that the style of this was kind of well written, but it was very predictable. It was on my tablet, which is rather large. It was only 100 pages, and it didn't feel as though there was enough build up and suspense to make it a story that really worked for me personally. I know that a lot of people will feel differently, and obviously it was enough that Shyamalan thought, oh, fantastic, this will make a great film, though it is titled, I believe, The Watched in the UK. There were elements of Irish and Celtic mythology involved in the story. It felt like there was a little bit of alien history in there as well, but it just, for me, it didn't quite work, and I gave it 2 stars. What was very interesting was the fact that I was not alone in this opinion when it came to the book club. In fact, most of us thought that the suspense hadn't been given enough time to develop and build into something that was going to make the ending seem incredible enough that we wanted to read the sequel. So we all came away from it thinking, well, it was okay, but it wasn't all that. And that is how I felt about it as well. The final book that I read, book 10, was Elusive by Genevieve Cogman. And I am somebody who has loved a lot of Cogman's previous work. The Invisible Library and that series in general is very well done. And I loved the world she created in that. And with Elusive, which is the sequel to Scarlet that came out last year, she's created an alternate version. It's a retelling of, in many ways, the Scarlet Pimpernel, which obviously is based during the French Revolution. And this ties in, not only does it tie in the politics and the trauma that goes on when all of the gentry is rounded up and beheaded, because there should be no hierarchy, though ironically there still is a hierarchy even when they get rid of the monarchy and the nobility. It goes into all of that in depth, but it also introduces a new sort of plot line with the introduction of vampires and how vampires are actually a large amount, they make up a large number of the nobility, both in England and in France. And I loved the way that she wove this through the story and gave us an intriguing view of position and state and status. It was very well done, and I look forward to reading the next one in the series. But that was a NetGalley read, and I believe that book is already out. However, if you haven't read it and it sounds fascinating, definitely pick up Scarlet, which is the first book in the series. Now we get to the bit that is different, and that is DNFs. I know, believe it or not, I DNF'd 2 books in June, and I was so disappointed, especially as one of them I'd really been anticipating, and the other one had been given such glowing reviews by a number of my friends that I thought, I can't go wrong with this. Oh yes, you can. You can go wrong with anything. And I went wrong with both of these. So the first book I DNF'd was Rob Rinder's The Trial. The cover, I'm stupid. I judged a book by its cover, and I really shouldn't have done in this case. Definitely not in this case. The cover made me think this is going to be cozy mystery. The book felt confused. I don't think it knew what it wanted to be. It could have been a really good cozy crime, cozy mystery, stroke light thriller, but it didn't become any of them. And I think I managed to get to nearly page 200. And when I say there's only 350 odd pages in this book, Yeah, 357 pages. So I was 157 pages from the end. And I told myself, you can read it, you can finish it, Ray, you really can. I just looked at it and looked at the next book on my pile and said, no, I don't want to. So this was my first DNF of, actually, I think my first DNF of 2024, and also my first DNF of June, which is very unlike me. The second one is possibly going to have many of you going, are you joking? Depending on what sort of books you like to read. And that was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. Now, I got this from Amazon. Don't jump on me, because it was on sale. It was a brand new release that was already on sale for half price. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. She's gone back to STEM, because I didn't enjoy Bride at all, but I finished it. And I got about 120 pages in. I told myself at page 80, when I wasn't liking Rue or Eli very much at all, I didn't warm to those characters. I didn't feel there was any genuine chemistry between them at all. I got to page 80 and I said to myself, read another 20 pages. And when I got to page 100, it was like, go on, read another 20 pages, because it's getting late. It's too late to pick up another book now. I think it was about 10:30, 10:45. It's getting too late to pick up another book now. Give this a little bit more of an effort. It might improve. And I am really sad to say I got to page 135 and said, I don't like these characters. I don't like this writing style. And I know that she actually, apparently, she's done this in dual POV, which is different to every other book that she's written previous. Well, the other STEM books she's written previously. And this was apparently due to a lot of comments that came from her readers. Also, it's trying to be erotica in some way. It's far less closed door or lights out romance. The activity in the bedroom is spelled out explicitly. And normally, if it was well written and it actually had some oomph to it, I wouldn't have a problem. I've read plenty of books where the oomph is there and the chemistry between the characters is literally steaming off the page at you. But it just didn't happen with this book, and I really wanted it to. And I think that's maybe the problem, the fact that I wanted it to work so badly. So my two DNFs of the month are Rob Rinder's The Trial, and I'm not going to try with another book for him, and Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and I don't think I'm going to try another one from her either. I've read the rest of her STEM novels. I haven't read Check and Mate because for some reason it just didn't talk to me, and I have read Bride. But I think that Not in Love was just one step further than I'm happy to go with her books. So that is my June. My July started with an Agatha Christie. It continued with, I can't even remember, even though it was only 2 days ago. And it is going to continue with Babylonia, my most anticipated 2024 read by Costanza Casati, because the cover's beautiful, the story sounds incredible, and I absolutely loved Clytemnestra. So what is on your list of reads for July? Are any of the books that I've just finished for June there? Have you read any of these books? What did you think about them? I would love to hear from you. So please pop a note down below, click on that like button, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And until I get back to you again, bye.